work in progress, you have a responsibility. I'm saying you as a teacher, but you as teachers have a responsibility to give your kids a sense that their job is to live a big life, an imaginative life, an aesthetically beautiful life, and a life that isn't controlled or contained by dogma or any kind of theological straitjacket, but rather a life that's always seeking, always questing to ask the next question and the next. And that means that we take as an article of kind of faith that we are incomplete, that every one of us is incomplete, that we are moving, but that we are not there. And that means we have to constantly be in a situation of invention and reinvention. And school is a good place to allow that to happen and to learn that powerful lesson. Another very important question that we ought to take on to ourselves and also teach our kids is that, notice he approached and nobody had to get his way. No security. I think it's working. I think it's fine. It's good. Takes a technician to pull the mic. I couldn't figure that out. Thank you so much. A second, besides the notion that we are each a work in progress, is the notion that we're living in a history that's also on the move. That history is not only not finished, but it's being made right in front of us. And if you take a short look backwards, anywhere, we recognize that we are not at the end of anything, even though existentially it sometimes feels like this is everything that happened led inevitably to this, but it couldn't be true. And what that means is that what we do or don't do makes a huge difference. Whether we act or don't act, whether we stay quiet or speak up, makes a huge difference. And all of our students, and we ourselves, should learn the lesson that being neutral in a living history is to support the status quo, and that it's our responsibility to speak up and speak out on the issues of the day, on the kind of imaginings that we can have about the kind of society we'd like to live in. Now, Americans, as you may know, are known the world around as being both geographically challenged and historically, kind of backward. You know that, right? Like I was telling folks earlier. I'm sorry?
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I'm speaking for myself too. But here, I'll speak to you as well. National Geographic did a survey of 18 to 25-year-old American kids, gave them a blank old map. 80% of American kids couldn't find Iraq on a map. 80% couldn't find Israel-Palestine. 40% couldn't find Great Britain. 40% exactly. 40% couldn't find Great Britain, and an astonishing 10% couldn't find the United States. That always, I'm sorry?
What are they learning in school?
That's my point. That's exactly my point. What are they learning in school? But since we all laughed, incidentally, when I said they couldn't find the United States, draw a freehand sketch quickly of Bahrain. Quickly. A freehand sketch of Bahrain. There's American money tied up in it. How about drawing a freehand sketch of Tunis? War and revolution is God's way of teaching Americans geography, so we all now know where Egypt is. But I'll bet you 2 months ago you couldn't have picked Hosni Mubarak out of a police lineup. And that's an indication of the fact that we are living isolated lives, and that's a mistake. So one of the things we should recognize is that we live in a world, and that world is moving and changing constantly. And I think that it's absolutely a criticism of the schools to say that we stopped teaching geography 40 years ago. We stopped teaching history 20 years ago. Now we teach social studies, and even that has become watery and strange. So this is absolutely a problem. And what's the solution? The solution is teachers have to be smarter themselves about the fact that we are living in time and place, and that we are moving in time and place. Linked to that is the notion that we are existing in a dynamic and three-dimensional world, and you can only know the world by acting upon it. You can't know the world by sitting back and looking at it. You have to know the world by acting upon it. In simple things, You can't explain ice cream without tasting it. You can't know jazz without hearing it. All of you know how to ride a bicycle, right? And if you're riding a bicycle and you start to fall over to the left, which way do you turn the wheel? Oops. Which way? Right, left, exactly. Well, you turn to the left, but I'm teaching my granddaughter how to ride her bike right now. It's backbreaking work. And the one thing that is for sure true is that explaining to her that she's sitting on a gyroscope and that means that when she falls to the left, she should turn to the left is insane. It doesn't work. But learning how to ride a bike, you automatically learn. You do learn that when you're on a gyroscope, and you learn that when you're falling to the left, you turn to the left. The same is true on much more abstract and difficult matters. Rather than teaching about history, we should be learning from history. Rather than learning about democracy, we should learn from democracy. Rather than learning about nature, we should be learning from nature. And this is something, again, that you can do in your classrooms. On every important issue, the key thing is to learn from and not about, to not see things as distant and abstract. A final lesson that I think all of us have to enact in our teaching, and that we should both enact for ourselves and also for our students, is the notion that everything that exists has alternatives, that there is always an alternative. And that means that standing right next to the world as such is the world as it could be or the world as it should be. And those are things that kids can learn to experiment with, to explore, to wonder about. And I'm saying this in direct opposition to Margaret Thatcher's deathless phrase, there is no alternative. There's always an alternative. And seeing the world as possibility is as important as seeing the world as it is. What this means to me is that we as teachers, our students as students, and all of us as citizens, have to learn a rhythm that's extremely simple to say but difficult to do. And that is, we have to learn to open our eyes to the world as it is. And open our eyes not just once, but twice, 3 times, forever. Every day, the exercise of opening your eyes and seeing the world as it really is part of learning how to be an active citizen. Secondly, we have to act on whatever the known demands, whatever we see, whatever we understand. We have to act, we have to speak up, we have to say something about it. And then third, we have to doubt. If we don't doubt, we find ourselves imprisoned in the logic of one clear idea, but that idea turns into dogma very, very quickly. So the rhythm is pay attention, be astonished, and then tell about it, doubt, and start over. If you don't doubt, I want to just say one word about doubt. If you don't doubt, then you end up, as I said, kind of in a dogmatic world, in a prison. Some of you know, for example, the Life of Brian, the Monty Python movie. Do you know that? If you don't, put it on your Netflix immediately. It's about a reluctant Messiah, and he's standing on a rampart at one point during the movie, and he's saying to the mob below, "I'm not the Messiah." And they all say to him, "You're not the Messiah." And he says, "No, no, no, you have minds of your own." And they all say, "We have minds of our own." And then one guy in the crowd says, "It's funny, I don't feel like I have a mind of my own." And the other people smack him and say, "Shut up. Get a mind of your own." So that's a dogma. And that passes for thought. But that's very much what we get stuck in if we don't practice the work of doubting. Paying attention is also much more complicated than it sounds. And there are lots and lots of examples. There's a marvelous book by José Saramago, the Portuguese Nobel laureate, called Blindness. It's his first book translated into English. He won the Nobel about 8 years ago. You know the book? Hard thing to read because he has no punctuation or paragraphs. That's crazy. But it's a great book. And it was made into a movie with Susan Sontag, I think. Not Susan Sontag, Susan Sarandon, yeah. But in this book, it opens with, it's called Blindness. And his name is José Saramago. And you can just Google blindness and you'll find it. I love that you can say you can just Google whatever and you'll find it. But anyway, you can. The book opens, the first paragraph, it's some modern American city, and a guy is stuck in traffic during rush hour, and suddenly goes blind at a stoplight. And he can't move, and the car is stuck, and horns honk, a little chaos breaks out. Someone helps him from his car and somebody else steals his car. He's taken to a clinic where everyone in the clinic has gone blind. And so they put these folks in a locked facility, and they are guarded by military so that they can be kind of quarantined. And slowly the soldiers go blind, and then within the first 30 pages, everyone goes blind. And what do they do because of blindness? What they do is they group up into gangs, and the strong gangs prey on the weak gangs. Gangs of men steal and rape gangs from gangs of women. People hoard food and hoard housing. And it becomes a gruesome, miserable, dystopic nightmare of huge proportions. And by the time it reaches the kind of very bottom of where you can imagine it's going to go, the first guy's eyes come back on. He can suddenly see. And then the next and the next, and then they all can see. And they hug each other, but awkwardly, because what they've done to each other is gruesome and miserable. But they're happy to have their eyesight back. And one person cries out, why did we lose our sight, and why can we now suddenly see? And someone else says, perhaps we didn't lose our sight, perhaps we were always blind. Blind people who could see, seeing people who were blind. And Sarah Marlowe means that to be a metaphor for our times. We are seeing people who are blind. We are blind people who can see. We're not unaware of unjust wars and ridiculous kind of over-reliance on militarization and incarceration and surveillance. We're not unaware of these, but what are we doing? We're not unaware of the AIDS crisis in Africa, but what are we doing about it? And the demand to wake up, to pay attention, is a demand that we should take seriously. So, to me, that's the rhythm of what we should be practicing. Our teachers, activists, not always, but I think that we share certain things with activists. And one is that we practice this rhythm of paying attention, telling about it, and then doubting if we have it right and going back to the beginning. You know, the town crier in the old days always came through the town saying, all's well. And it's our responsibility to point out where things are not well and to challenge the status quo when it's not acceptable. To ask ourselves, is this the best we can do? And to posit alternatives. So it seems to me that's where it comes together, this notion of democracy, a notion of social justice, and a notion of teaching. Thanks very much.